In some Georgia real estate transactions, sellers give tenants the right to purchase the property in the future if the tenant wants to do so. In these types of transactions, the tenant has the option of purchasing the property under the terms the parties agree to, but is not obligated to do so. Sellers and potential buyers can document this understanding in an exhibit to the purchase agreement called the Option to Purchase Leased Property Exhibit. In this lesson, we will walk through certain sections of this exhibit, as you may run across it when working as a Georgia real estate professional. Let's start with Section A. Any type of legal contract requires consideration, which is usually money changing hands. Item 1 in Section A addresses this, providing for a payment from the tenant, also called the purchaser, to the landlord, also called the seller. The payment is called the option payment. Item 1 is the provision that expressly states the tenant is not obligated to buy the property, unless or until the tenant informs the landlord that they intend to exercise the option to purchase it. The option payment is just that, payment for the tenant's right to potentially buy the property in the future, according to the terms of the agreement. In Item 2, both parties acknowledge that they understand the payment is a non-refundable payment to the landlord/seller. The payment does not become part of the down payment or other payment towards the ultimate purchase of the property. Item 3 spells out some conditions to this agreement. Under this agreement exhibit, the tenant has the right to buy the property from the landlord. However, that right does not apply if the tenant is in default on their lease. For example, if the tenant is significantly behind on their rent and notifies the landlord that they want to buy the property subject to this exhibit, the landlord would likely be within their rights to turn them down because of the conditions in Item 3. Similarly, this option to purchase must happen before the lease ends. Item 3 includes a space for the parties to specify a number of days before the lease ends. If the tenant does not notify the landlord of their intention to buy the property before this agreed-upon time, the option expires. Section B provides the specific terms that the parties are agreeing to when they sign this exhibit. We'll walk through Items 1 through 5 together. Item 1 is where the landlord and tenant agree on what the purchase price for the property would be if the tenant decides to exercise their option to buy the property before expiration of their lease. In Item 2, the parties should include the legal description for the property. The legal description is different from the physical street address or mailing address. The legal description is the way the property is described in the county land and property tax records. The parties can attach a separate exhibit with the full legal description. They could instead provide a reference to the deed book where the description is located, or could fill in the legal description by hand, identifying the lot number, block number, unit number, development name, and a reference to the plat book and specific page where the full description can be found. For condominiums, the description should also include additional information that refers to the county's condominium plat book and condominium floor plan book. Item 3 is a spot to record the earnest money for the agreement. The parties should document how much earnest money will be paid, to whom it will be paid, the holder, and how it will be paid. Earnest money must be paid either at the time the tenant exercises their option to purchase the property or within a specified number of days from that time, as provided and agreed upon in this section. Item 3 also provides important requirements that the holder must follow, including the circumstances in which the buyer may be deemed in default of the terms of the agreement. Item 4 documents the types of closing costs the buyer and seller are each responsible for paying, including transfer taxes, title search fees, and other costs and fees associated with the real estate transaction. This item also addresses the fact that certain types of expenses will be prorated at closing, with the buyer responsible for their share and the seller for theirs. These may include association fees, utility payments, waste fees, government fees, and others. Finally, Item 5 is where the parties should document how the closing date for the sale will be determined. Generally, the parties agree that within a certain number of days after exercising the option to buy, the tenant will choose a closing date that is at least 14 days but less than 45 days from the date they exercised their purchase option. This item also spells out additional rights and obligations each party has, and gives the tenant/buyer the right to remain in possession of the property through the closing date. The provisions we have reviewed in this lesson are some of the most important provisions of the option agreement to purchase leased property. You should read through and familiarize yourself with the remainder of the provisions in this exhibit, so you will be better prepared to answer questions when they arise.